Hi guys, my name is Nate. My channel is called Real Roman Fishing, and today I'm going to be covering a question I've gotten asked a lot on this channel and on my Fishbrain account too, and that is what's the best way for a beginner to go out in some of these Ohio Lake Erie tributaries and catch a steelhead. So today I'm going to talk about where you should be fishing, what you should be fishing with, and how you should be fishing in order to start catching these awesome fish. Stay tuned at the end too, because I'll actually have some footage of these tactics catching fish on the water. So before we dive in, as a disclaimer, I'm not the most experienced angler on the river by any means. I'm not the best angler on the river, and everyone's gonna have different opinions about what the best way to start is. This is just what I have found is a really good, consistent way to go out and catch fish, so hopefully it's helpful. If you do have other opinions about what could work better or what you might change about this setup or any tips I'm giving, please drop them in the comments, because I would like that to be a spot where people can look and learn from as well. And we'll start by just diving into some tips for how to find a spot to fish and how to find a good location to target steelhead trout. If you're just starting out, I think the best way to start looking for a fishing location is to go to a river that's actually stocked with steelhead trout by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. There are some smaller streams and other rivers that will get runs of steelhead too, but if you're just starting out, you want to make sure you're fishing in areas that have really high concentrations of fish. As you start looking at more advanced research, one tool I highly recommend is Fishbrain. That's a great way to get a river report, see where on the river fish are being caught and what gear anglers are using on that specific river. You can also follow me there if you'd like to. But overall, make sure you're fishing a stocked tributary and doing a little bit of research to figuring out where on the river you'd like to go. That should hopefully put you in at least a decent spot. Now we're going to do a quick walkthrough of the type of gear I'd recommend, and I'm going to be talking about float fishing specifically because that's the way that you're going to see most people fishing these rivers for steelhead trout, and that's the way that I found to be the most effective. So the first thing I'll talk about is just your rod. You can see right here. What I have is a 9'6" medium light rod. I got it at Bass Pro for like 40 bucks, and that's what I'd really recommend to start out with. You want a good long rod for float fishing. It helps you control your drift a little bit more. But if you only have something that's like 7 feet or 8 feet, you can go out and you can fish just like that. The reel I have paired with that is just a Fluger spinning reel, nothing special. If you have a reel that you already use for bass, odds are it's gonna work for steelhead too. Just wanna make sure you have something with a decently smooth drag because these fish are gonna pull some line once you actually start hooking them. But a spinning reel, anywhere from a 2000 series to a 4000 series, should work fine for this type of fishing. The line that I have on this reel is a 10-pound braid line. I highly recommend braid because it's gonna float and make your life a whole lot easier when you're fishing. Plus there's no stretch, so you'll get a really good connection to your bobber when you set the hook. So braided line, anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds, that'll work perfectly to line that reel. So moving down that braided line, right on that braid, I have my float. So I really like these Raven balsa wood floats. I've tried a number of other ones though, and really whatever you have can work. But I do recommend getting something that has a little bit of a longer shape like this so that it can be pulled underwater easier by the steelhead. This is an 8-gram float. Or a 7.8 gram float, and that's pretty standard. 7 to 9 I think is a good versatile range. And then what you're going to want to make sure you do is that you actually weight the rest of your presentation to balance out with that float. So moving down the line, I have this 1/4 ounce, so that's 7 grams, egg sinker here, right under there, and that's going to balance out well with the 7.8 gram float, especially once I add in the weight of my jig as well, which I'll talk about. So I have that 1/4 ounce egg sinker, I have a small bead just to protect my barrel swivel, and then I have this barrel swivel. So I have my 10-pound braid main line going to this barrel swivel, and then coming off of that barrel swivel, I have just some 8-pound fluorocarbon. So fluoro is going to be what you want for your leader, 6 to 8, maybe 10 pounds at the highest. That's going to be good and invisible underwater. Some people will put split shot on this, but if you're fishing a jig at the end of it, you should be good to just fish the leader bare and use this barrel swivel up at the top to weight down your float. At the end of that 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, I have this small 1/32 ounce jig head. So this is just one from a bulk pack at Cabela's or Bass Pro. You can look up some specialty steelhead jigs like Voodoo or some other companies like that as well. But the bulk packs do work fine as long as you're not like horsing the fish in too much. The real secret to this tactic and what I think really makes it stand out is what you're gonna put on that jig head. So my recommendation for the lure that you start out with, if you're just getting into it, is going to be to get some 2-inch crappie tubes, and those are actually what you'll put on the jig head. So I've got my 2-inch crappie tube right here. I'm just gonna feed that onto the jig head like this. Wrap that around the bend. Now I've got a jig that's gonna have a lot of action when it's underwater. You'll really see these little pieces of the tube down here float and create quite a bit of action when it's underwater, and that's gonna entice the most active steelhead to eat this. And I will show some footage of what it looks like when they're actually eating this and taking your bobber down on this type of presentation too. So as a quick walkthrough of all that gear again, you can see I have this 10-pound braided line going to a 7.8 gram Raven float that's attached to the line with tubing on either end of the float. That'll usually come with your float. Then that braided line is going to continue down to a 1/4 ounce egg sinker. So that's about 7 grams, and I have this one here. I put a small bead right under that egg sinker just to protect the knot that I have at my barrel swivel. So then I have just a uni knot tied to this small barrel swivel, and then on the other end of that is where I actually have my leader. So this is where the 8-pound fluorocarbon is attached, and that runs all the way down to a 1/32 ounce jig head with a 2-inch crappie tube attached to that. And that's really a secret weapon, and that's gonna be money when you're out there targeting Ohio steelhead in a lot of these stock tributaries. So I do highly recommend this white on white tube setup if you're just getting started out. But another thing you can also consider is using marabou jigs. So for example, these are some of my favorite color marabou jigs that I'll use when I'm out on my river too. This is more of a woolly bugger type setup. But getting a good mix of black, white, olive, those are some of the most popular colors, as well as pink, that people use to target these steelhead. When it comes to what else you can put on the back of this plain jig too, so if you don't want to use a crappie tube, you also could put more of a minnow style presentation here, like this right on there. You could change up the color of the tube, so I do like throwing pink tubes on there as well. Or you could try something like a steelhead worm, these pink worms, sometimes a little bit thicker than this too. But those all do produce fish in these Ohio tributaries as well. One other piece of gear that I think can be really helpful if you have them or if you're able to get them are waders. So you can usually find spots in these tributaries that you can fish from shore and do fine, but waders are really gonna help you get to more water and fish different parts of water that you might not be able to reach otherwise. And they can get you away from the crowds a little bit, because a lot of people will be congregated around the places that are easier to fish without waders. So if you're just looking for a really cheap pair to get out in the river, neoprene can be a good option just because it's cheap, it's pretty durable, and it's very warm. So if you're out here in the winter, hopefully that'll keep you a little bit warmer when you're out in the river. So once you're out fishing, you're gonna be looking for a few things. You're gonna be looking for current, number one. These fish are gonna be feeding in current and relying on current to bring them food. So you're gonna wanna find current, and you're gonna wanna look for deeper pools or deeper holes where the fish can hold. So if you're fishing a river that's mostly 2 feet deep, find that 4-foot deep pool. If you're fishing a river that's 3 to 5 feet deep, find that 6-7 foot deep pool. If you have some good current in that pool as well, you can pretty much guarantee that there will be some fish hanging out in there, and now you just have to go about catching them. So hopefully these clips will show you a little bit more about how you can actually start hooking up to those fish in those pools. So here you can see I'm fishing an area that has a ton of current pouring in over this little bridge type dam area. So what I'm doing is I'm casting out into the current, I'm letting my bobber drift down, and I'm actually pulling it a little bit out of the current where the water's a little bit softer and not moving as quickly, because steelhead are really going to be prone to sit there. And now I'm actually just jigging my bobber a little bit, and that's what entices the fish to strike. With these tubes attached on the end, you're gonna get a lot of action when you twitch your bobber just a little bit. So you can see here, the bobber's out in the current, I'm twitching just a little bit, and then the steelhead will actually attack and pull that under, and then I can set the hook as soon as I see the bobber dip. Now with this one, again, you can see I'm casting out into where I know it's the deepest, right up against that back wall, and you can see more current out there as well. And as you can see, I'm letting it drift down, and I'm twitching my float all along, right while it's sitting in the current. And sure enough, that's gonna produce a strike right out there close to the wall in the deep water. And as soon as that bobber dips, I'm gonna set the hook out here. So it's that combination of current and deeper water, twitching that bobber a little bit, that's gonna produce more fish. Now here's one where there's really not a lot of current to speak of, but I know it's deep, and since I'm close to the river mouth, I know there are fish here. So you can see it's just a quick cast, get that tube moving underwater, get those tentacles like twitching under there, and that's gonna get an active fish to feed. And here you can see I get a quick bobber down right after the cast, and I'm fighting a solid steelhead here. So those are just a few quick examples, just so you can see kind of how I'm fishing these tubes out on the water. A few tips that can help you along the way. Number one, talk to other people out there on the river. I learned a lot just by asking people what they were doing to catch fish, why they were fishing a certain way. Go out and talk to people, because for the most part, they'll help you out. Number two, don't get discouraged. Steelhead fishing is very difficult, especially at first. So if you go out there and strike out a couple times, like, don't put your head down. That definitely happened to me. But the longer you go out and the more you actually learn while you're out on the river, the better. A couple little technical tips too. Fish deep. These fish are going to be sitting really close to the bottom, even in those deep pools. So you don't want to be fishing your bait 4 feet deep when the fish are going to be sitting at 6, 7 feet. You want to really get it down to their level. So when in doubt, drop it lower. Make sure you actually find the bottom. Let yourself feel the jig ticking the bottom, or let yourself snag up a couple of times, just so you know that you're going to be close. And those next casts, once you retie and put it back out there, are going to be right in front of the fish. So always fish deep. Make sure you find the bottom. Don't just spend your whole time drifting way over the fish where they're not even gonna look up and see it. Another one, don't leave fish to find fish. I feel like this was a mistake I made a lot early on. If you're sitting in an area and you're seeing other people catch fish left and right, stick it out, keep drifting over, keep changing your depth, maybe change what you have on your jig or change the color of your marabou, whatever it is. But if you are in an area that you know has fish, don't leave. Stay there and really fish it to the fullest of its potential. If you have any questions about anything that I cover, because I know it's really hard to fit everything into a video, at least when I'm planning this out, so drop them in the comments. I'll make sure to respond and answer anything that's in there, and hopefully some other anglers who are watching this might as well, so that you can get a lot of good feedback. Also, I do plan to put more effort into this channel this year, get some awesome footage, share a little bit more content like this. So if you like this, if you appreciated it, if you're excited to try some of this stuff out, if you drop a comment or subscribe or like this video, that's really helpful for me and encourages me to keep putting effort into the channel. So thank you for watching, and I really hope this is helpful. If you do catch a steelhead after watching this video, please let me know. So thanks again, and good luck this season.